Guys, just got out of watching Jack the Giant Slayer. Not sure what to say about this one. I like it better than I liked Oz. It's, again, I like what they were trying to do with the movie. I don't think it was executed to the best that it could have been. The story, it wasn't that it wasn't entertaining, it was that it was kind of choppy. There was just a lot of, like, oh, we're here, okay, now we're over here, now we're over here, now we're over here type of thing. Not that it was going between, like, the upper world and the lower world type of thing, it's just mainly dealing with characters. Like, you're dealing with this character, and then all of a sudden you're over here dealing with this character. Now this character is going to be over here dealing with this character, and that character is going to be over there dealing with that character. And it's like, it wasn't that it was hard to follow, it was just really choppy, which I thought it could have been done better. Again, the actors in this, they were okay, but they probably weren't the best people to have been cast for it. The guy who plays Jack was played by the guy who played the zombie in Warm Bodies. I don't know his name. But at least now I don't have to call him R, I can call him Jack. So we're going to get into the premise now. Basically, the movie starts off with a young Jack reading a story. His dad comes in, and he asks his dad to finish reading him the story, so his dad's reading him the story. This cuts back and forth with the Queen reading the same story to her daughter. And it gets to the end of and it's basically the story of the giants. So then it goes into this weird, really cheaply done CGI animation thing while they're telling the story, which I guess since they're telling a children's story, it was trying to be cartoonish. So I can kind of get away with that, except the CGI was really bad at this point. Like, I don't know if they were intentionally trying to make it that bad, or they just didn't care, but it looked like really early use of CGI, like worse than Lawnmower Man. I don't know if you guys have seen Lawnmower Man recently, but if you look at the CGI in that and make it worse, that's what this cartoony part looked like. So then it goes to years later. The Queen's dead, the girl's the older princess, you know, like her 20s or whatever. Jack's father died. He now lives with his uncle, who, you know, Jack's older now. He doesn't have a brother like they had in the fairy tale. His uncle sends him to market to try and sell a horse, not a cow. Well, he's trying to sell the horse. There's a backstory where the, what do you call him, the chancellor or the sheriff type of character that works for the king, the royal advisor, whatever you want to call him. Obviously he's going to be a bad guy because that's how these Arthurian tales work. So he breaks into the tombs and steals relics that were buried with the old king, which is explained in the fairy tale that they're reading to the children at the beginning. That basically the old king fought the giants. Basically there were a bunch of monks who were trying to reach God. They built these they developed these magic seeds that built beanstalks that grew into the sky. They climbed up them to try and reach God and found out that there was another world between earth and heaven, which was the land of the giants. And the giants came down the beanstalks and found first they were just gathering everything. They got greedy. They were like, oh, I want these horses. I want this gold. And they started taking everything. And then they found out that they had a taste for human blood. So they started eating humans. The king at the time, looking for a way to fight them, killed one, cut out its heart. And it turned out their hearts were made of stone. They melted down the stone and mixed it with some magic and made a magical crown that the king wore that could control the giants. Basically, all their hearts are kind of in unison. So to go against that crown is basically going against your own heart type of thing. So the Chancellor breaks in the tomb. So then when the king dies, the crown and the remainder of the magic beans were buried with him for safekeeping. So the Chancellor guy breaks into the tomb, takes the beans and the crown, and he's planning to plant the beans, go up with the crown, take control of the army if it's really there, and use the army of giants to destroy the kingdom and to take over the rest of the land. Why he's planning to do this, I don't know, because the king's already planning on him being the one that marries his daughter, because the daughter has to marry someone of noble birth. So he's already going to be marrying the princess and will essentially become the king, but he wants to do this other route, which makes no sense. So then one of the monks goes into his private office. He can't find the crown, but he finds the beans and runs off with them. And the guards close the gate looking for the monk who stole the stuff. They don't know what they're looking for. They just know they're searching for something that was stolen. The monk passes the beans off to Jack and steals his horse, which is basically how Jack loses it. The monk basically tells him, bring these beans to the abbey and they'll reward you with more than what you're asking for the horse, and then he steals the horse. So Jack goes back to his uncle with the beans, tells him, I'll take the beans to the abbey tomorrow, we'll get the money, everything will be fine. His uncle says, monks don't have money, the guy conned you, you stole his horse, he stole your horse, whatever. And he goes, now I'm going to have to sell your parents' belongings to get money to fix the leaking roof, is what he needed the money for. And Jack's like, you can't sell those, they're not yours to sell. And he goes, well, the horse was mine to sell, and you basically let somebody steal him, so now you have to pay for him with your belonging, type of thing. So the uncle's kind of a dick. But, so the uncle goes into town, and somehow Jack drops the beans. Oh, the uncle throws the beans on the ground before he leaves, and then Jack picks them up, but one of them rolled underneath the floorboard that Jack didn't see. And at night it's raining. The princess, she's rebellious and likes to go outside of the castle, and she's at a show, a stage play where they're retelling the same story of the giants and the original king. Some guys start to harass her. Jack sees her there and kind of steps in, not knowing she's the princess. He's just trying to defend the lady's honor. The guys get in a fight with Jack, and then the royal guard shows up and takes her back to the castle. He realizes that she's the princess, and so that night, before it starts raining, she runs away from the castle again, and then it starts raining, and as she gets lost in the darkness and the rain, she sees Jack's porch light. So she goes over to his house and says, can I come in out of the rain? Then it turns out that the rain leaks under the floorboards and makes the seed grow. Jack falls off of the vine as it's growing and gets knocked out. The girl's still in the house. The house goes all the way up to the top of the vine. The king and his army show up as Jack wakes up, and they're like, we found my daughter's bracelet in your possession, because he was holding her by the wrist before he fell and it slipped off. That's how he ended up falling. So he tells them what happened, and the vine's his proof. And then he says, well, where's my daughter? And he goes, she's up there. So he sends his royal guard up, and Jack volunteers to go. And the Chancellor says, maybe it's a good idea to go. He's the only one that saw what happened. He might be a viable resource. The only reason the Chancellor's inviting Jack to go is because he knows he has the beans now, so he's trying to get him back. So they climb up the vine. They get up there. They're looking for the princess. Most of the party dies except for Jack, the leader of the army, or the knights or whatever, and the Chancellor and his sidekick. So Jack finds out where the princess is, and him and the guardsmen go in to rescue her. Well, they kind of get captured, but they get away and end up rescuing her. And then the Chancellor shows up at some point and takes out the crown and says, I'm your king now, you have to do what I say, we're going to go down and destroy the kingdom, blah, 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 blah. So they kind of know what his plot is. They escape to go crawl back down the vine, and the guard leader says, I'm going to stay and make sure he can't, he doesn't get away with this. You guys get back down and warn the king and the army to be prepared. So they go back down the vine. The guard leader ends up killing the Chancellor, and before he can get to the crown, the giants get a hold of it. So now one giant declares himself king. So they're climbing back down. The leader of the guard manages to get back down too. And then as they're coming down, the king orders his guard to just cut down the vine, even though he knows it means he'll probably never see his daughter again. He needs to know that the kingdom's safe. So as they're cutting down the vine, Jack, the princess, and eventually the leader of the guard all get back down. But turns out the Chancellor also dropped the magic beans, so the giants are able to grow the vines and ride them down to Earth, where they go on the attack. So basically then it's defend the kingdom from the invading giant army. Jack and the princess were told to... The princess was told to go into the royal chamber and light the pyre to warn the other kingdoms that danger was coming. And Jack was told to escort her there and make sure she stays safe, because he's earned the king's respect at this point for rescuing his daughter. So they take off to do that. In the meantime, the new king of the giants falls into the moat, and the other giant who doesn't really like him. Fee, Fi, Fo, and Fum are the names of 4 different giants, and then the leader, one who eventually becomes the king's name is Fallon. And I think it's Fum doesn't like him, so he lets him drown, or supposedly drowned, thinking, okay, now I'm the leader, even though he doesn't have the crown. But Fallon actually goes under the water and swims in under the city through the aqueducts or drains or whatever, and ends up inside of the castle where Jack and the princess are. So Jack and the princess are fighting off Fallon while the king and the guard and the rest of the army are trying to keep the giants from getting through the gate. Jack and the princess get captured by Fallon, and he's going to eat them. And as he's getting ready to eat Jack, Jack still has one of the beans left, and he throws it down the giant's throat. And as soon as it gets wet from his saliva and his stomach acid, the vine starts to grow and rips through him, basically killing the giant. So the vine grows, and then the giant army just gets through the gate. Jack comes out holding the crown. They realize he's the new king. They bow to him because they have no choice. He sends them back up to Giant Land, up the vines. They cut down the vines. Then it cuts to Jack telling the story to 2 children. Basically, him and the princess have gotten married, had 2 kids. And the kids are like, well, you never tell us what happened to the crown. So he says, don't worry, it's in a safe place if the giant should ever return. And then they said, oh, well, can you tell us the story one more time? So he goes, okay, but this is the last time, then you have to go to bed. So he starts telling the story, and then it goes through like different generations of people telling the story, but it's only in voiceover because while this is going on, it shows you what happened to the crown. And basically the crown's being built into a new crown. It's dipped in gold, polished, some adornments are added to it, so on and so forth. But as this remodeling of the crown is being done, it has different voiceovers from different generations telling the stories of the giant and Jack's battle with the giant. And I missed this at first until I kind of listened towards the end of it, and then I realized what they were doing. And it's as the story was passed down through the generations, it got twisted slightly. Like at one point, they're like, his brother threw the beans out the window, and then someone else goes, no, it was his mother. And then another point, they're like, and he went to the market to sell the family horse. Or was it a cow? You know, so they're kind of showing how the story got twisted to become Jack and the Beanstalk from what it originally was. And then we find out that the crown is basically the crown that is part of the crown jewels of England that are locked up in the Tower of London. And there's a boy there on a tour, and they're explaining, you know, like how the crown jewels were stolen at one point and then recovered, and now they're locked up in the tower. And the boy is supposed to look like a younger version of the Chancellor, which I don't really get what they were leading up to with that, because they're not telling the story of Jack and the Beanstalk at that point. They're just telling the story of the crown jewels. So I'm not sure if he was supposed to eventually become the next person who tries to take over the Giant Land, or what was going on there. It was just really confusing at that point, but yeah, so basically that's what happened to the crown and how the story got twisted to become Jack and the Beanstalk that we know now from what it was through this movie. Which I thought was a nice touch. They show how they twisted from the original, unlike Hansel and Gretel that just kind of rewrote part of the story and forgot another part of it. So I do like that they did that. Overall, like I said, I was more entertained by this than I was by Oz. But at the same time, again, it runs into maybe not the best cast of actors. It wasn't that they were bad actors, it's just there wasn't anyone really memorable, I guess. You know, there's not... I mean, I guess they're kind of big names, but it's not like a leading cast that you would know if I wouldn't just recognize, like, oh, it's Morgan Freeman, or oh, it's Samuel L. Jackson, you know, type of thing. It kind of needed someone bigger than who it had in it. So other than that, yeah, that's Jack the Giant Slayer. I almost said Jack and the Beanstalk. As far as the star rating, what did I give Oz? A 2? I liked this better than I liked The Call, so I'm going to go ahead and give this one a 3. Like I said, it's not the best movie, but at least I was more entertained by this one than I was by Oz. Actually, I hate to give it a 3 because I actually kind of like The Call better than I like this, because this was still kind of boring, but not really. And The Call was actually pretty good until the ending. So I almost hate to give it a 3. I kind of want to knock it back down to a 2.5. But yeah, 2.5 to 3, somewhere around there. You know, let's just say 2.5. It's not as bad as Oz, but not as good as some of the other stuff I've seen. But at the same time, it's entertaining. So if you're into the action adventure fairy tales, you'll probably like this. Hansel and Gretel is actually quite a bit better than this, but I do like the little twist ending of how they explained why the tale is different than the movie. But yeah, that's not enough to really hold it over. So I definitely like Hansel and Gretel better than this, but at the same time, this wasn't a bad movie. It kept me entertained for a while. So if you're into that kind of thing, check it out. If you have your choice between this and Oz, I would say see this. If you have your choice between this and Hansel and Gretel, I'd say see Hansel and Gretel. That's my recommendation on this. Not sure what I'm going to get around to seeing next. So that's it for this review. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you at the movies.